Why, hello there, everybody. Yeah, what the hell is this thing? It's not some nose decoration. It's not an ear decoration. It does have a practical function, but let me get to that here in just a little bit. I got a couple of stories that I want to tell you that led me to doing this in particular. I just got done watching a video from the channel I Love Muzzleloading, Ethan, and he was answering a question from one of his subscribers about leaving your muzzle loader loaded overnight and in the field in a hunting situation. Will it go off the following morning? And I'm going to say here yes and no. Just depends on what, the ambient temperature is outside, what conditions you're dealing with, what part of the country you're in. So, there's not one answer to any of this. Okay? But I'll give you two of my experiences that led me to making this. Experience number one, I was managing an equipment rental yard in Flagstaff, Arizona. I had got drawn for a late October deer hunt. So I loaded up my rifle the night before and I just lowered the hammer onto the cone. And because of the cold temperatures at night and the warm daytime temperatures, and I was living in a travel trailer at the time, condensation did build up in my cone. I did not know this at the time, and this was years ago. This was when I was actually still shooting my Thompson Hawken, and I've since got rid of that gun since then, and it was a percussion rifle. So I loaded it up, set it in the corner of my trailer. The next morning I got up well before daybreak because I had been scouting and I had located a forked horn buck, a little button buck or something like that. So anyhow, I get out in the field, put a percussion cap on, and I start tracking down this buck that I knew was in the area. I come across the buck, picked up my Hawken gun, dropped the hammer, the percussion cap went off, and the charge did not. Damn. So the buck scurried off because of the noise of the percussion cap going off. And obviously I quickly put another percussion cap on top and I discharged that because I didn't want to take a chance of another shot not going off. I didn't know how severe the condensation buildup was inside my snail and my percussion cone. So I didn't get the buck. Someone else got it later in the day. But anyhow, that was experience number one. Experience number two, I'm living in southern or more southerly place in Arizona, Cottonwood, Arizona. And I drew that same area as far as the tag was concerned, but I decided to hunt down into the cedars because I had been locating some bucks down low. So anyhow, and this is in my house, okay, again, late October hunt. Daytime temperatures are pretty warm still, and nighttime temperatures drop, which allow for the conditions of condensation to build up. So this time I come up with a more gooder idea. Loaded the gun up the night before, got a piece of hard leather, lowered it down onto the nipple. You'd think that would have solved the problem. Following morning, I get up, get into the area where I want to hunt, and I'm walking up and down the hills and whatever, and I come across the crest of a hill, and down about maybe 50 yards, 75 yards or so, here's this nice buck grazing. Pick up my Hawken gun, snap! Same thing happened. Cap went off, didn't set the charge off. So, needless to say, I didn't get that buck. So, whether you put a piece of leather between the cap and the hammer does not necessarily guarantee that the charge is going to remain dry and go off. Okay? And or leaving, everything to the bare elements, such as just lowering the hammer on top of the cone is going to ensure a barrier. So what I did as I sat down and I thought about coming up with something that I can leave the percussion cap on the cone and still have an absolute safe way of keeping the gun in camp or in the house loaded. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate just real quick what I did. Okay. Here's my Lyman Great Plains. Okay. Now, as most of us know, that if we have these Lyman guns, when you put your hammer on half cock, you don't have near as much space as you would, say, like with a Thompson. Okay, there's the half cock on the Thompson tends to be more like this, whereas the half cock on the Great Plains is a lot lower. Okay, so what I do is I load the gun, I'll put the percussion cap on it, half cock, hold it back. This is nothing more than a 1/4 inch piece of copper. And I'll set it over everything, and then I'll lower the hammer on that piece of copper. That way it allows me to leave my gun fully loaded and primed. And in my opinion, you know, make up your own mind. We're all big boys here. We all wear big boy pants. You decide for yourself whether this is enough of a safety measure for you or not. This is what I do, and this is what I've done to overcome that issue. Because personally, I don't like loading my gun in the morning when I get out to the field, because in my mind, ramming the ball down and everything else just makes too much noise for me. That's me, not you. That's me. So, when I get into the field, all I do is just pull the hammer back just a little bit, comes right off, and the hammer still sets on that half cock position. That's all it is. Okay, so do I really want to show you guys how to make one of these things, or is it self-explanatory? Well, for those that would like to see one made, I'll show you what I did. Okay, just some 1/4 inch copper tubing. Get yourself a tubing cutter. Now I cut mine long because it's always easier to make them a little longer and cut off the bottom of it than it is to make them short and then you have to start over. So get yourself a little tubing cutter, make a couple of passes. It'll eventually cut. There it goes. Oops. Maybe an inch. This is maybe a little bit longer. Okay. So what I do and what I did is I took and I flattened one end of it. One end is flat. And yes, for this application, it's still too long. But what you have to keep in mind is, will it go over the cone? And in this instance, it does not. Okay? So you have to be able to open this up to be able to fit over the cone and with the cap on it. Okay? So, what I did at that point, and I'm just using tools that I have in my shop, I took a file, the bottom of it, and I just started reaming it out. Now the reason why you might want this flat first is for convenience, because see, now I can hold that with a pair of pliers and then I can start reaming this out. Okay. Now I've got it reamed out. I don't know that it's reamed out enough yet, so you have to ream it and try it. Ream it and try it. Okay, it goes over. Now, the test is, will it go over with a percussion cap? Because you have to bear in mind, the percussion cap will add a little bit of the diameter of the cone. So let's put a percussion cap on it. I'm going to seat it like I normally do. Put it on there, then I just push forward and seat the cap. Because that's something else you don't want to have happen. In the field, you're ready to draw down on a deer or an elk or whatever, and your cap's not firmly seated, gun's not going to go off, and just that noise of the hammer dropping could scare your game away. So I've got the percussion cap on it, and it fits over and it comes off real easy. Okay? Now, let's get the proper length. So what I did is, let me get resituated here. Alright, open them up. Use this end of your calipers for the depth gauge. So what I did, and it's real simple, guys. Now you can choose depending on what size copper tubing you get. Now this is just 1/4 inch, so the 1/4 inch is not going to go over your shoulders that you would put your wrench on to take the nipple off to clean it. So if you go to the bottom of where the nipple is, and just, let me turn this way, and just set her down. Let me get a close up. There's my depth right there. That's the total depth that I need to work with. Okay, so what you can do is set it on the outside. You get turned around here so you guys can see it. And you know about where your depth is. Okay, and fortunately for this application and the cutter that I'm using, the wheel has left a little clean spot on this piece of copper tubing. So I know where I need to go with that. At this point, what you want to do is flatten out the rest of the copper tubing to just above that point. You want to give yourself a little bit of working room. Okay? So let me get that accomplished. Alright, you can see how much more I flattened out. Now, depending on what mechanism you have for either cutting the rest of that copper tubing off, that flattened out copper tubing, you know, obviously a hacksaw or, you know, a file, or just taking your pliers like I did. Since copper is real soft, I went above that and I just worked the copper back and forth, and it will eventually snap. Okay, reflatten that back out. Okay, now the next thing, since I have a belt grinder, I just took my belt grinder and I rounded off the edges just enough so that it sets up underneath the cap, or your hammer, that little cap, or, you know, the indentation on your hammer. Okay, so let me go work on that. If you don't have the tools to do it, like a belt grinder, then obviously spend your time with a file. So let me go round that off, and I'll be right back at you. Okay, so there's the piece, rounded off. I can tell you right now, this is too tall for my Lyman Great Plains, but I think you guys will get the gist of everything, especially if you've got like a Thompson 50 caliber or something else that has a much longer half cock. Okay, so I'm at full cock right now. Drops over just fine, comes off real fine, and there it is. Now again, this is not the right length. So if you have to adjust the length, obviously flatten out a little bit more and shorten up the flat part of this, okay? So once you get the length that you need, let me show you what I did next. Put that away. That's why I have a drill and a very tiny drill bit. Then you drill through that flat spot to create the hole you need to attach it to a lanyard. Just that simple. Tie a lanyard to it. Now I like putting maybe a little piece of jewelry on it with a bead, chevron bead, so I can just throw it in my pouch, and when I need to grab it, all I need to do is just either feel for the claw, feel for the bead in the claw, and it's right there. And it is handy, and I will tell you from experience, this works for me. Just simply because I've tested it. Okay? The last deer hunt that I went on was a 5-day deer hunt, and at the end of every day I put this little device over the percussion cap with the cap still in place. That particular hunt I could not get close enough to shoot a deer, and at the end of the 5-day hunt, because that's all it was, I took this device off at, when I was ready to leave, and I discharged the firearm, and the gun went right off. In my opinion only, take it for what it's worth, I think the best way to keep moisture from gathering or collecting inside your nipple and or your drum or your snail is to keep that percussion cap in place, because that does create that barrier, the top of the cone to the underside of your percussion cap. Now, that's what I've done. Anything that you do to circumvent a safety issue, it's not on me, that's on you. But this is what I've done, and I've become very at ease using this at the end of the day. Putting this over my percussion cap that's on the nipple and lowering the hammer on top of this. And then when I go out in the field during the day, I showed you it's real simple. Just pull the hammer back a little bit, pull this off, and you're on half cock. So thanks for watching, and everybody have a great day. And if you found this little device useful, well, please share it with your bestest of buds. Bye.